If you need to read an XML file, you probably want to use simple XML. However, if the file is too big, then you can use XML Reader, for instance. Those are the two possibilities that you have that are with PHP 5.2 the best, the easiest to use. However, you might be in a project where SAX is being used. SAX is similar to XML Reader. It was here before XML Reader. And it operates in a little different way, basically defining functions that get fired when you're at the beginning of an element, when you're at the end. And it gets kind of complicated as you're trying to read your XML file in a similar way as XML Reader, where you're only looking at one little piece of data at a time, but even a bit more difficult because you have a lot of issues with white space. It reads the white space between the tags and that kind of thing. And you've got these events that are firing, and it's kind of like if you were in a dark warehouse of car parts or something and you've got a flashlight and you can only look at one at a time. That's what it's like using SAX to read an XML file. But what I'm going to do here is go the whole 9 yards, read through our members XML file here, and bend SAX so that we can build up an array of members and display it just like we did with the XML Reader. So here we go. We need to make a parser first. So XML parser, create, super. Now we want to define what the functions are called that are going to be called, or the name of the functions that are going to be called, when we start an element and when we end an element. So we say parser here, that's what we just made, and now we say the function, first function is going to be called start, and the next function is going to be called end. That's it. We have to make these functions now. However, there's another setting we need to do, set character data handler, and we have to send the parser again, and then we have to say cdata here. That's the name of the function that we're going to make, which reads the data. So this function, let's go ahead and make it, start, will be called whenever we're at the beginning of an element. So name, that's going to be the name of the element, and attribute we also need. Actually, these are attributes, and this is an array of all the attributes in the element that we're in. Let's just echo this out so that we get an idea of what's going on here. I'll save that for later. Here we go. So what do we need to send out? Let's say that we're at the beginning here. And name, and now we need the attributes. We're going to implode them so that they're a string, comma separated, attributes, super, and then this thing at the end so that we can see them all in little parentheses, and end our div here. That's super. So that is our start, which is defined here, and now we're going to make end. And what does end have? End doesn't have any attributes. End means this here, for instance. Here, let me show you. So start is when we're here, for instance, and that's why we have attributes. End is when we're here, and there's never any attributes in an end tag. So that's why we only have name here. I'm going to call this start because the name of the function is start. That's just to show us where we are. And since we don't have any attributes, we don't have to do anything with attributes there. So we're just showing it here. Super. And let's actually give it some color just so we can see. Weight, bold. Okay, so now we'll be able to see the start in green and, for instance, the end in red, just so that we can see what's going on here. And now we just need to do one more, and that is called cdata here. That's what we called it. You can name these anything you want. So parser data, okay. And now we have echo div. Let's give this a color as well, maybe a gray. Okay. And what are we going to show here? Let's just say cdata and data and end the div tag, and we're pretty much good to go here now. So end, no space, Start, no space, no space. So we are almost finished here. We need to do some more, 2 more lines here. Parse. We have to actually do the parsing now. Parser, file, get, contents. We have to get the contents of the file here. So, and then send true. So this is saying with this parser that's all been set up here, and this text, which is the text from our XML file, parse it, and then this is like a close basically. Free the parser. Parser. Okay, that's just to get the data out. So let's see if that's working here. What do we need? Read with SAX. So let's go there. Read with SAX. Super. Cannot redeclare end in 16. That might be reserved here. Let's try this here. You can't use the word end in this as a function name when doing this. So that is what we have as we step through our file node by node with SAX. We see here that it's at members. That's right here. Members. And C data is actually this information here and this, which is for SAX very relevant, the space between the tags. Then we go to member. That's the start of the next element. Here we are. And the attributes are 1 and president. And then we go to first name. And the data in first name is Jim. Then we're at the end of the first name. And again, this C data here is after the first name and before the last name. And then we get the last name, score, and so on. And it just runs through the file like that. Now, the thing is, this is probably not very useful to you because we are just skipping from element to element as we go through the XML file. And that is probably not the way you want to, for instance, output your data. You want to collect the data in some kind of variable so that after you're done going through your XML file, you have that data to act on, for instance, in an array. Let me just give you a small example, a real live example of what you might do with SAX. And that is you want to count how many members there are. The problem that you have here is you can add each time you're at members inside these functions, but the scope of your variable is only inside the function. So you need a global, and the way you define it is with globals, defined at the beginning of your file that you can then add inside your functions. So when we're done, we want to say echo, there are globals, and the name is number of members. Oh, it's not there. Number of members. Okay, now we don't want to do anything here. We don't want to do anything here. But inside start, every time we are on a member tag, we just want to increase this variable by 1. So let's do a little switch here. Switch, what? Name. Okay. And case. Now, if we look here, we see that everything is uppercase. You can change that, but we'll just leave it here. We just need to know in our programming that it's uppercase. If it's member, right? Because we only have, let's see, 1, 2, 3 times that it's member. Where's the third time? Here. And that'll tell us how many there are. Then we say globals. Actually, I can copy this thing. So, plus plus. Then we have a break. We don't need this. And now we can see how many there are. If we add 1, let's add 1. Or doesn't have a position. Jill, Ashton, sister, 22. we see that there are 4 members. So it's actually counting them. And that's how you get the ability to build a variable as you're stepping through it in SAX. Because of these functions here, you need to have the global scope to be able to add to that variable. But now what we want to do is we want to actually collect an array, a collection of member arrays, as we did in the XML Reader lecture, so that we have all of the information and not just how many members. And that's a little trickier in SAX than in XML Reader. So let's get our goal here. We don't want to do the number of members anymore. We want to, after we're done, we want to say, display the results here, and then, so members, let's define it here as members. Okay, so we're going to have global members is going to be a collection of member arrays, and then we'll have our for each loop here, and we'll just run through it as we always do here. Okay, and let's just echo out all of the information that we've collected. Okay, and it's first name, last name, score, and after that let's put a horizontal line. So here we have score, and here we have last name, and here we have score as well. So that's our goal. Now, how are we going to do it? We need to define some globals up here. Globals and current index is 1. That's going to be the number of the current member array that we're building. Then we have current field, and that's going to be, for instance, like first name, last name, field, right? And then we want the array itself, globals, or the collection itself, members, equals array. So now, in our start function, whenever we start an element, if we're here, or if we're here, or if we're here, we need to find out which one we're on. That's why we have a switch statement here. And now basically if we're on member, we want to create an empty array to fill as we continue on and go to first name, last name, and score. So here you get the feeling that you're in the parts warehouse with the flashlight. We're only looking at member now, but we have to plan for what we're going to be looking at as we continue on. So let's say here member equals, and that's going to be an array, first name. It's going to have a value of nothing to start out with. Last name, and it's going to have a value of nothing to start out with. And score, and it's going to have a value of nothing to start out with. So, and we need to, here at the beginning, add this member array to our collection that we defined up here, and that we're going to display after we get done with all of this, after we go through our XML file. So that just is simply add the member. Now, what if we're on first name? Let's copy this. If we're on first name, well, then we don't need to do that. We just need to change the current field name. To first name. Why, you say? Well, we're at the element first name, and we don't have any information yet. We're here. The next step is going to be here. That is, we're here in start, but when we get here, we're not in start anymore. We're in CData, and that's what we have to program next. So, in CData, we need to pick up this information that we got here. For instance, current index we need, and that's just going to be globals current index. What is the current index at first name? It's still 0. Now we also need current field. What is current field? Well, we just went through first name, and we were just on starting at the element first name, and we defined the current field as first name. So current field is first name. Index is 0. Current field is first name. Now we're on data, so our data is, for instance, Jim. So we say if trim data is not nothing, then save Jim, basically, in this collection, in this current index, which is 0, right? And inside that is this one right here that we just added when we were at the member. So it's already existing for us. And now we say current field equals data. So, we now added Jim in an array inside an array, in the array members, in the array member, inside the array members. So now what should we do when we go on now and get here to the end of the element? Well, we're going to be in here, in ended. And here we need to do another switch, basically, and say name. Okay, that's fine. And case member. If we're at the end of a member, we have to do something. What is it that we have to do? Well, we don't want our next... We don't want our next index to be 0, otherwise it would just overwrite our first one, so we need to increment that. Current index plus plus. Plus plus. Save. Super. We don't need. So, and basically we are now done. We've gone through first name and we've added it to the array. Let's just do the same with the others. Last name equals last name and score. We can just copy this. So score large equals score. Okay. And that's it. That's all we need to do. We've successfully built up this array here, and we're going to display it. Let's take a look. And we only get the last one. It does have 4, but it only shows the last one. Why is that? Let's debug. Okay, up here. We need to add to the collection. We need to add the member to this collection. So let's save that and run it again. And there we have all of our information in an array. After some major complexity in SAX, you can get an array out using global variables so that you can, for instance, go through a very large XML file looking for certain pieces of information and building up an array so that when you're finished, you have that array and then you can process it, for instance, or save it to a database or display it and that kind of thing. Again, if you just need to display information from an XML file, you're much better using simple XML, but you now know how to use SAX to run through large files if you need to.